Well, as I mentioned earlier, my camp has gradually moved from the Heartlands to the Great Plains to Hennigan Stead, which is now where I keep it. I've also recently moved my moonshine shack to the Hennigan Stead location instead of Tall Trees. Curiously, this does not mean that I'm necessarily super close to it with my camp, even though I'm in the same region, because my camp so far has never been below the plateau, and of course the moonshine shack is, so I always have to find a way around the cliffs and go down in order to get to my moonshine shack. I really like Hennigan Stead. It has my favorite scenery in the game. It's not super dramatic, although you can look out across the river from near the moonshine shack and see the fake Monument Valley, which for some reason is in Mexico in the game. Geographically that makes no sense because it's clearly fake Monument Valley. But you know, I really love the scenery, and in part it reminds me of where I grew up in Texas. It reminds me of Texas, the willow trees, the live oaks, the dried grasses, the cliffs. I just absolutely love it. And despite it not being super dramatic, it's super beautiful and feels like home to me. So I'm happy to have made that move. I've noticed, however, that and I've only done a few deliveries so far, but I've noticed that they seem to be longer. 2 of the 3 I've done are longer. And I've also noticed that even though I point my gun and let the AI drive, it's a little tougher. And 2 of the 3 times I've lost a moonshine jug making a delivery, even though the AI is driving. So something to watch out for if you're doing Hennigan Stead versus Tall Trees. That really never happened to me in Tall Trees unless I did something super careless. And in this case, I could have maybe prevented it if I'd been a little bit better on top of the revenue agents that were chasing me down. When I finally lost the delivery I most recently did, when I finally lost the moonshine bottle, it was because I was being shot at in the fog and I couldn't see the guy until he was right on top of me. But the reality is I had gone over a rock, I had gone over a number of bumps, and this is with the AI driving, so you just got to be careful. I think it's likely that I will lose moonshine bottles a little more often in Hennigan Stead versus Tall Trees, so something to be aware of. And the deliveries are longer. Like I said, I've only done a couple. I went to Old Bacchus Place, I went to the chapel kind of over there by Armadillo, and I went to Quaker's Cove, I think. Is that what they called it? They called it the shack. I think it was on the river. I think it might have been Quaker's Cove. I can't even remember now. But that's something to watch out for. The deliveries are longer, which means you've got to deal with a lot more revenue agents shooting at you, and the roads are a little rougher. There's a lot of rocks and stuff, so you might have some bumps. Anyway, I did that. I am still trying to save up a little bit of money. I finally tossed most of my saddles, all my roll saddles and my Panther saddle, which really was hard to do because they were super kitted out. Not only were they expensive saddles, over $500, with the exception of the Panther saddle, which is 18 gold, even worse, but the other 4 were all over $500, plus, you know, you spend better part of $300 upgrading the saddlebag and the stirrups, and then you spend another $350 on a lantern. So you're talking about $1,100 worth of saddle, 4 of them that I tossed, plus the Panther saddle, which was 18 gold, plus 350, plus another 140 or so. So I threw out a lot of money that I'd spent, but you can only hold 10 saddles, and I had 10 when I bought the most recent Nacogdoches saddle that I had. But I just decided that, you know, I really only ever want to use the Nacogdoches saddles because they're so much better than all the others. I wasn't ever using anything else, and I didn't want to ever use anything else. And I had the Panther Trail saddle on my Dark Bay Turcoman, and I didn't like to use the Turcoman, but it was mostly because of the saddle. I felt like it was always, his stamina was always running down, even though the Turcoman has pretty good stamina. He's got like a 3/4 ring. What he needed was a Nacogdoches saddle. So I just tossed all the other saddles. I now have 5 horses, 5 Nacogdoches saddles. I still can't quite use the Turcoman because like I said, it's a big investment, and I tend to kind of spend my money when I earn it, so I don't have tons and tons of it on hand. So I bought the saddle, I bought the stirrup. I was just a tiny bit shy of the money for the saddlebag, and of course I didn't have enough for the lantern. And then I did a moonshine delivery, so I now have enough I could go buy the saddlebag, but I still didn't. I'll just wait. Once I have enough to buy both the saddlebag and the lantern, then I'll buy them both, and then I'll swap out to that horse and ride him for a while, and he will go in the regular rotation. All 5 of my horses will then be equal in my esteem. Let's just say I won't mind using any of the 5. And then after that, I can start saving up for the 6, which I think I mentioned last time. I'm talking about getting one of the Perlino Andalusian, which is not a top tier horse. He's kind of a mid tier horse. He's about $550, and I'm round. He's 500 something. I'm rounding on the exact dollars. So, and then I'll need to get another Nacogdoches saddle, another saddlebag, improved saddlebag, another improved stirrups, and another lantern. So, again, we're talking $1,900-$1,900 investment. So I've got something to save up for after I finish this saddle, which is nice. Anyway, that's kind of what I have done. But let me talk. I've mentioned all the time that I think the complaints about the glitches are a little overblown, because I don't have too many of them. It is not unusual if I'm playing for several hours that I have at least 1, maybe 2 glitches, and I have to, go to online mode and restart something because something didn't work. But let me tell you a little bit about this morning, because every once in a while you got a day where you've got all of them pile up at once. Today I logged in, spawned at my camp, as I always do. Did not immediately go to the Moonshine Shack, because I know one of the last things that I had done was start a batch cooking when I logged off last time, so I knew that it wasn't going to be ready for a while. Had a bunch of daily challenges to do, like I always do when I first log on, and I don't try to do them all, but there's quite a few that were on the list as like, I can easily do these. There were a number of things I needed to collect. There were some plants I needed to pick, including one I knew exactly where it was, although it wasn't close to where I was. McFarland Ranch I needed to visit. That was super easy, obviously, because I was in Henniganstead already. So anyway, I went and I started doing some of those. I went and did my collectibles. I ended up having to go up to the mine up in the Grizzlies, where the O'Driscoll's gang is hiding in the first chapter of single player. And I had to go to Shea Porter, pick some ginseng. Here's the first glitch I had. You had to pick 5 ginseng. There's 5 ginseng in the ginseng farm. I picked all 5, and it still only registered me as having picked 4. Luckily, I knew that there was another ginseng not very far away, although I had to spend a few minutes trying to find exactly where it was. So that was my first glitch. Then I came back, and Madame Nazar, I was on my way back towards Henniganstead and my camp, and Madame Nazar was on the road in front of Limpany, which was convenient, so I was running by there. I had not only all the stuff I'd had to collect for today's daily challenges, but at least the day before, maybe even I had 3 days worth. And I don't do a lot of collecting for its own sake, but I do a lot of collecting of stuff for daily challenges, so I had a fair bit of stuff, and I sold that to her, and I had over $700, and I was like, okay, this is great. I can go buy the saddle and some of the stuff. And I knew that's what I wanted to buy. So I continued to run back to camp, and I figured, okay, by now I've been playing for over an hour. My moonshine is certainly done. My camp is close to the Moonshine Shack. So I'm going to run by my camp because my health core was run down. I'll eat some stew. It's on the way anyway. And then I'll go to the Moonshine Shack. So there's the second glitch. I went to camp, and I had been playing for quite a while. A lot of running around the map because I had to go up to, like I said, to the Grizzlies up in the snow and Shea Porter, and then I was down at Henniganstead on the San Luis River. And I went back to my camp, and although it was on the map, there was nothing there in reality. And that's a glitch that happens quite a bit, where you look at the little mini map, or you look at your map, like pull up the map, and it says you're in camp, but then you close the map and look around at the terrain, and there's no camp there. So that was the second glitch I had. And I said, okay, well, I carry plenty of meat. No big deal. I can live with this. So then I went to the Moonshine Shack. It was close. Tried to go in, and it despawned. This is unfortunately a common glitch. And you can't do anything. You can't even get on your horse when that happens. So the only thing you can do is join a new session and try to start over. So I did that. And then I had to run back to my moonshine camp again. Not super close because it spawns me up on top of the cliffs and I have to go all the way around and come back to them. So it wasn't terrible, but it was, I really wish you could spawn at your moonshine shack. I don't know why you can't. If it's one of your properties, you should be able to spawn at either your camp or your moonshine shack. But for whatever reason, you can't. So anyway, I ran to my moonshine shack. This time I was able to get in, and I went in, I drank my own strong moonshine, which was one of the daily challenges too. And then I went to go start the cell mission, which I also needed. Another daily challenge was craft a special recipe. So I needed to do the cell mission so that I could come back and start a new batch. And not only did I need to start a new batch anyway, but it was also a daily challenge to start a new batch. So I went to do the cell mission, and I couldn't select it. It was grayed out, even though I had 20 bottles and it was ready to go. This is another glitch I've seen before, so I had to join another session. Then I went back to my moonshine camp again, or my moonshine shack again. I got inside. I was able to start the mission and listen to Marcel give his little speech. And then when I tried to do the mission, I heard his speech, but instead of actually starting the mission, I went to the black screen of death with the little ring at the bottom. And when that happens and it stays for more than a minute or so, you're stuck. And the only thing you can do is actually close Red Dead entirely and restart it entirely. So I did that, respawned at my camp, ate some stew, because I always do whenever I'm at camp, although it kind of sucked because I had put some game meat in my stew earlier, and obviously after all these respawning and joining new sessions, I was long gone. And as I was doing that, I was kind of thinking, and it was dark, it was at nighttime, I was thinking, I sure hear a lot of frogs, and I realized these willow trees, I assumed I was in the Stillwater Creek area. These willow trees were not willow trees, they were cypress trees covered with Spanish moss. Pulled at my map. For some reason, it had moved my camp all the way to Lagras. And it's like a $9 fast travel to get to the Moonshine Shack from there. And here I am trying to save money. So I decided to run across the map, and it was actually good. There was 2 daily challenges I had forgotten to do, even though they were close to where Madame Nazar was, and that was to shoot 3 ducks, or skin 3 ducks, and then sell feathers. I had to sell 5 feathers, and I knew that if I skinned a duck, I'd get both a duck feather and a flight feather from each. So that was going to be relatively easy. So I ran across the map to the Bard's Crossing area, and of course it was still dark, and birds don't spawn at nighttime very often. Most birds don't. So I had to wait till it kind of started to get morning, and of course as soon as it was morning, some ducks showed up. I shot them, skinned them, ran to the Blackwater butcher, sold them. And by this time I had spent a lot of time trying to just start my stupid moonshine mission. Ran back to the Moonshine Shack yet again and had the exact same thing happen, where I tried to start the mission and I got the black ring of death. Had to start the whole application over again. Now I decided I was about ready to give up and call it quits, but I hadn't even done a single moonshine delivery, which really sucked. And I'd been online for over 2 hours, about 2 hours. So I decided I would give it one more try, and I spent an hour of that 2 hours just trying to do this delivery. I decided to give it one more try, logged on, my camp spawned in Henniganstead, ran to the Moonshine Shack, and it actually worked, although like I said, I lost a moonshine bottle. It was super foggy, so I couldn't even see the, revenue agents coming out of the fog. I knew they were there, but I was a little frustrating. It was a long run, and I lost a bottle. And I was able to go back to my shack and start another another batch, get to the last daily challenge, and have a batch started so when I log on again, it'll be in process. But that is exactly why people say these glitches make the game unplayable. Today, it was unplayable. There's one thing I really kind of needed to do. It's kind of one of the most basic things that I do, and I couldn't do it. I had to either log out and join another session or restart the game entirely 6 times. 6 times. That is just freaking absurd. So I understand why people say that. I do still think that their complaints are overblown, because I admit that's only ever happened. I only had a similar situation to that happen to me 1 or maybe 2 other times in many months of playing. Most of the time it's not that bad. Although I will say that at least half the time I play, maybe more, I have to join another session at least once. That it is really bad, and it is embarrassing. Should be embarrassing to Rockstar, who is a top tier 5-star development studio, that they have something this buggy that is still this buggy months after it's been out. It should be embarrassing, and it's kind of embarrassing to me. It's frustrating to me. I kind of get on the case of the people who complain too much about it, because I think that they are too negative. But after a day like today, I can understand why people say that, and I know I won't have a day like this again for a long time, and I'll get over it. But it is frustrating, and that right there is exactly what part of the problem is. I really hope that with the next major update, one of the things they do is finally fix these issues. Some of them have been better than they were. The camp despawning has not happened to me very often in a long time, and it used to happen all the time. The animal situation has been great. When I was looking for ducks, I was like, there's no birds, but holy cow, the deer and the antelope sure are playing by this river. I saw dozens of them. So the animal issue is much better. The camp issue is usually better. I find that now I'm having more bugs, and this is a perfect example of it. I'm having more bugs at the Moonshine Shack itself than anywhere else. Anyway, that's my journal entry for today. I don't know how often I'll do these, but I wanted to vent a little, because I had a frustrating morning trying to make a frickin' moonshine delivery, and then even then, I didn't make the full money from it because I lost a moonshine bottle after all that. So it was frustrating, but you know what? I got over it.